Welcome to my classroom. We have a 5-minute passing period and a student population of roughly 2,500 students. As students are coming in during passing period time, they're picking up their textbooks, which were graded the night before.
Yeah. You guys come up and grab your books, please. We can find it.
Because he's like, okay.
Oh, what did he say?
He's okay. The girl said hi.
You must not speak the same language as everybody. Not yet. No, I'll give you guys
Lilia scared me. You said you had to read like.
Oh, also.
Whoa, what the heck?
The first bell you'll hear is the minute bell. After that is the last bell.
As you grab your book, you need your spiral notebook out. If you can't remember, open it to the tab and then remember you wrote your name on the table. That's not your pocket, so. Yeah, it's mine. Michael. And then just give it to her. It's all messed up. Mine. Take the cover off. That was mine. Don't look at it like that. Can you not? Can you not?
We didn't have to read the book.
What did you
Yeah, we do actually. Yeah, we do.
No, by your time. If you can't go on, just open up to the tab. Remember, I can do that. You guys go ahead and get your spiral notebooks out. I know it's standing right in the way of it, but I'll move it just a moment. Spiral notebook.
Please
Hey guys, here's what I need you to do, please.
Yeah, but you changed. I don't know you.
I should see on your desk your spiral notebook. I'm going to give you 7 minutes. Your out of paper. You can just use a piece of paper and then we'll start again. 7 minutes. Okay, we're going to try this again. I need everyone to listen up. So yesterday, Bryson, yesterday, after I graded the page that you guys practiced the annotated bibliography, our class average was not great. It needs to be better because the annotated bibliography is a really important skill that you're going to need to know how to do now for English class, in the future for history class, and if you're college bound, you definitely need to know and understand how to do that. So, our entry task today has to do with primary and secondary sources. Make sure that you do both of the bullets. So the first one, write a definition for a primary source and secondary source in your own words without peeking in your book. And then the second part, categorize the following types of sources. So yes, you have to write, like number 1, textbook, and then put a P if you think that that source is a primary source, put an S if you think it is secondary. For those longer ones, if you just write original photograph in your spiral and you don't write that whole sentence, that would work just fine, okay? So do both of those bullets for the next 7 minutes, please. Be sure that you're titling the entry task and you're dating it.
We start every class period with an entry task. These vary from timing from 5 to 10 minutes long. Today they're doing an entry task that should take them about 7 minutes to practice their use of primary and secondary sources. I find that with the new 7-period schedule, our students need a little bit of time to adapt to the next core class. This is what the entry task is very helpful in doing. It settles the kids down, and especially my 9th graders. Day. So if a student leaves to use the hall pass, you'll hear a knock at the door. Although it could be a little bit disruptive at times, it's a new measure our district is taking in order to ensure their safety. The student I'm on my way to go talk to is Irene. Irene is a foreign exchange student from Korea who really struggles with the English language.
About 2 more minutes.
As I'm walking around and talking to students, I can start to see where some of the gaps are in yesterday's learning. This is what helps me steer the direction of today's lesson.
Okay, we're going to go over these. So attention back up front. That spiral notebook should still be out and on your desk, please. I want you to fix them if you got them incorrect, which is why I asked you guys to write down the type of source. So I'm hoping you all wrote down like textbook, newspaper, and all that so we can reference this later on. This is a big, important concept that we need to understand. So the first one, textbook, is a secondary source. I'd say probably 70% of you as I'm walking around put that one down as a primary source. You did put secondary? So Peyton, did you kind of guess that it was secondary, or what was your thinking behind that? Good. Did you guys hear him? Do your blank stares mean yes or no? Yes. So he said, one more time.
It's like someone else told about it or thought about it.
Mm-hmm. So think about your history textbook. It's someone else's words about something that's already happened, right? So it's a second-hand account. So it would be a secondary source. So the second one, a speech, that is a primary source. A speech is a primary source because if I'm up here giving an original speech that I came up with, I'm the first one to do it, right? Okay. Number 3, a newspaper. How many of you put secondary show of hands? How many of you put primary? I like to fake out. So why is it secondary? What do you think?
Because like they have to get what they were saying from someone else.
They're reporting on something that's happened, right? So let's look at newspaper compared to number 5, film footage of a historic event. So let's say, like, take out the historic part. Nowadays, someone could take out their phone in the midst of something happening and record it, right? So that footage, that live kind of footage, that would be a primary source. But the news reporter who's reporting on that live footage, that's secondary, because they're reporting on something that already happened. See the difference? Okay, the essay about the Jim Crow laws, that would be a secondary. Why?
Because you're writing about something.
Say that one more time.
You're writing about something that you're learning about.
Yeah, you're writing about something you're learning about. So in that example, what is the original source? The Jim Crow laws. So that's what I saw yesterday when I was grading your annotated bibliographies. The source that was the Jim Crow laws, where it just listed the 36 laws. A number of you said that that was a secondary source, but it's actually primary because it was just listing the actual laws. That was the actual document, right? So the other article that we read where they talked about the Jim Crow laws, that's secondary. You starting to see the difference? Okay, and then the original photograph of a segregated restroom sign is a primary source. Okay, so right underneath that, we're going to do 2 quick writes. They're super quick, 5 minutes each. Super quick. 2 quick writes. So the first one, and you can just do this right underneath, and you can put quick write number 1. 5-sentence minimum. Here's what I want you to think of. Pick something interesting that happened to you, meaning you were there when it happened, and it has to be something that happened last summer. Now, if you're like, nothing interesting happened to me last summer, then just pick anything, okay? And write about it for 5 minutes.
It has to be like a thing, but not necessarily a bad thing.
It doesn't have to be good or bad. It just has to be something where you were there when it happened. Okay? But it does have to be school appropriate, obviously. Oh, Roberto's erasing stuff over there. Okay? So 5 minutes. So the quick write rules are this. 5 minutes, when I say it out loud, you're like, oh my gosh, it's so long. It's not. But what I want to see in those 5 minutes, I don't want to see your pencil stop. Even if you have to write the same word over and over again until you come up with something else to write about. It's practicing stamina in our writing, okay? So 5 minutes to write about something that's happened to you last summer. Are you ready? You may begin.
What if it happened to you? When I let it go, what if it happened to you?
It should happen.
Oh, what? I got bloody nose in the middle of the ride. So they have
I'm going to give you time to share. Just right now.
Would that be true? We have to share these. We have to share these. We have to share these.
Not in front of about 1 more minute. Go ahead and finish up the sentence you're on. Okay. Now this next one is really similar, but there's one specific difference. It's something interesting that happened last summer, but this time you were not there when it happened. and write about it. So this could be something that happened to a family member, something happened to a friend. It could be something that happened maybe like in the community that you heard about. Someone brought up in the last class a windstorm, and they wrote about that, but they were out of town, so they wrote about what they heard. Okay? That was 2 years ago. So pick something interesting that happened last summer that didn't happen directly to you. Now, if you're totally stumped right now, then you have the permission to be creative. Make something up that happened to a friend or a family member.
Here we go.
Yes.
I watched it. What do you got?
My story's pretty good.
Take about 1 more minute. Finish this sentence that you're on. Okay. So, what I would like for you guys to do is, in a minute, I'm going to have you find people in this room that have the same birthday month as you. That might be one other person, it might be multiple people. Wait for directions though. Wait. Just wait. I promise I'll let you talk about birthdays next time. When you find the group that has the same birthday month as you, you're going to share your 2 stories. And then, as a group, I want you guys to talk about which of your quick writes is a primary source and which of your quick writes is a secondary source and why. Does that make sense? Then you'll jump in with the next month closest. So if there are none, then you can go to the next. Okay, find your groups. Let's see if you can find your groups in 10 seconds. The last class did it in 8. August. Hey, raise your hand if you are a lost birthday month. Just find a group that's closest to you right now. August. And go ahead and meet with them.
It's all about that May.
So why don't you guys just be together? You need your spiral. So just find a group. If you don't have one, find one and start sharing and discussing that on the board, please.
Last summer, I went to Disney World. I got really know. So last summer, I did a hotel.
Since he wasn't kind of the primary.
The young man that's talking to me is confused and thinks that it's really obvious that the first story that they wrote is primary and the second one is secondary. So I pushed him to explain the difference between the two, and this was such a cool moment because something finally clicked for him. I wish you could hear our audio in this conversation.
I know we've got some big groups who haven't finished sharing their stories, but I do want you to get to what's on this board in the next 2 minutes.
It's a rule. Last summer I was in Idaho when all of a sudden my friends started snatching me. Last summer her was her taking herself in the start. The weird part was that the shark was smiling at the camera. Then moments later she was gone. She had eaten the shark.
You want to fight?
Yeah, my sister Jackson. Him and his dog go stay awake and she was on her phone. And then she's like, Chucky, it's 2:34 and 37 something. I'm like, just tell him here. I had to return mom because I don't want to surprise him. So I was like, that's all I your brother.
Okay, guys, let's head back to our seats in 5, 4. Good job, Sharma. 3.
That guy killed him with the stick.
2. 1. Again?
Yeah, I don't know how.
Back again? What did you do? You have had that one day. Do you maybe want to leave your book here sometime?
No, because there's a lot of stuff. in there.
Sharma, you.
Just because my hated too.
Okay. You can clear everything off of your desk except for something to write with. No, it's not a test. I know those words make you feel like. I know. I just felt like it's not a test. Don't you worry. Yeah, just make sure you write down how and what way. As long as you know that number is. No, I'm not. I swear I got that number. What is the worst thing you do? I know. And then he said that he was going to. No, he said he was going to. Okay, if you have a highlighter, you can get that out. If you don't worry about getting up to get one. It's not a huge deal. Okay, this assignment is another opportunity. I'll wait till you're all listening. It's another opportunity to really understand the annotated bibliography concept, okay? I think that our book did an okay job of showing us how to do that, but this kind of breaks it down into smaller steps for us. So at the very top, if you have your highlighter out right now, you may highlight the due date. It is Monday the 16th, so that's this coming Monday. Monday is a collaboration day schedule, so it is the shorter periods, just as a reminder. So this needs to be turned in on Monday. You will have time today after I go over it to get started, and then you'll have a little bit of time tomorrow in class as well.
Is this 6 period?
It is, every day. So we're going to talk about I will wait. I'm going to go over all of the directions and steps, and then if you have any questions, save them for the end because I'll likely answer them on the way, okay? So, I think one of the trickiest parts about yesterday's assignment in page 195 was that it asked you, part of that annotated bibliography was to evaluate the source's usefulness as far as does it answer my research questions. But we didn't have research questions. So for this, I've given you hypothetical research questions as if we're conducting a mini research project. So the directions at the top, and please follow along with me. Pretend you are conducting a research project about Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Use the given research questions and the provided sources to practice your annotated bibliography. So the two sources are stapled to this packet. Those are the two sources I want you to use. I do not want you to go elsewhere online and Google answers. I want you to practice reading sources and composing a really good annotated bibliography. So please know that I read both of the sources, and I know that these two sources will answer those three research questions. So all the information you need is in this packet. So the three research questions are listed below. So look at step 1. Read both of the sources provided Make sure you read them carefully so you fully understand the purpose of each. Make sure you read them carefully so you fully understand the purpose of each. I'm saying that twice because that's something I noticed yesterday when you guys were summarizing your sources on page 195. Your summaries did not demonstrate that you understood what that source was about. So if you are struggling and you don't know what the source is, try to reread it, and then if you go home tonight and you start reading this and you're still stuck, then tomorrow ask me questions so we can clarify it, because you can't write a good annotated bibliography unless you understood the source. So the first thing you need to do is read both of the sources. Step 2, take notes below each of the research questions as you gain new information from the sources provided. This is just like what we did on those note cards, where you guys had a research question and then you took notes on information that answered that question. Do you remember this? You're going to do that same thing. So your notes do not have to be extensive under each of these questions. They just need to be enough to answer it. That being said, looking at number 2, it says, was Martin Luther King Jr. seeking a violent or nonviolent approach to ending segregation? I do not want you to put a one-word answer, okay? So you can quote directly from some of the sources if you want to. You can summarize information, but that's where you put your notes. If you feel like there's not enough space right there, then absolutely attach another piece of paper, okay? So that's step 2, is taking those notes down, okay? Flip over to step 3 in the back. So all I did for step 3 is I broke down the parts of the annotated bibliography so that it makes a little bit more sense for you guys. So it says, answer the following questions to demonstrate your ability to write an annotated bibliography. Use complete sentences. So I gave you the citation. That's what's in the bold up top. So this first citation is for the actual I Have a Dream speech, the actual words to his speech, okay? Number 1 says, briefly summarize the specific information learned from the above source, including key details. So the key details part is important. That was the other thing I kind of marked many of you down on yesterday, was when you, for example, when you summarize the Jim Crow laws, you said, these are the Jim Crow laws, they're about segregation. True, but that's not quite detailed enough. You need some specific key details. That should be 2 to 3 sentences, okay? Questions on that part yet? So if you don't understand the source, that number 1 right there will be really difficult to do. Right, Michael? Number 2 says, explain how this source is useful when answering the research question or questions provided. So some of these sources will only help you answer 1, and some of the sources might help you answer all 3. So if it helps you answer one of them, then write about the one it helped you answer. If it helps you answer multiple, then write about all 3 of them. I gave you a sentence stem there. It says, this source is useful for understanding ... So finish that sentence with something like, this source is useful for understanding the purpose of Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, which was, and then you can go back into that. Does that part make sense? And then number 3 says, describe the type of source, primary or secondary. At this point, we should be professionals at that. And the authority. So the authority is where you explain to your reader why this is a credible and reliable source. So how you know it is credible. So for example, this article is reliable because it comes from a well-known news source, CNN. It would be hard to write about a reliable source if you were saying something like, this article or this source is reliable because it was a post on Facebook. So that's the part where you realize, man, this probably isn't a good source. Okay? You'd be surprised. And then turn it over to step 4. Step 4 looks just like step 3, it's just for the second source. So you do the exact same thing for both of the sources. So I just took the annotated bibliography parts and pulled them apart and broke it down for you guys so that I can see that you totally understand each of the parts. Do you have any questions on it? So here's my recommendation. With the time that is left, which is not much, I want you to start reading the first source, which starts on the next page, and it's the I Have a Dream speech. there will likely be words in here that you'll trip up on and things that maybe confuse you. So if it were me marking the text, I would circle those words and fully make sure I understand everything before I go into my annotated bibliography. Now, if you would like to, tonight if you go home or if you have your phone, you could go onto YouTube, and if you just search "I Have a Dream" audio, you could listen to him say the speech as you're reading. That might make it a little bit more interesting because it is pretty lengthy. And his audio version is 17 minutes long. So if you want to listen to it as you follow along, that's more than okay. So that's the first source. Then the second source comes right after it. It's an article from ABC News. Okay? Yeah. Do you have any questions on this? When does this due? Everyone say it together.
Monday.
One more time, I didn't hear the
Monday.
Oh, all right. Okay. Go back to the "I Have a Dream" speech page. This page right here. And please use the rest of the class time to start reading it. You do have to read this whole thing. So, research, basically, I just found the sources for it. So that's, you can use those two sources. So you don't
Hola. Yeah.
notice someone doing is while they're reading, they're marking the text for spots that might answer those questions. That's a good idea. We have about 2 minutes left, so go ahead and pack up. Do not lose that packet. You need to hold on to it until Monday. If you feel like you're nervous about taking your To Kill a Mockingbird book home with you, like it's going to get ruined, as long as you know your number, you are welcome to leave that book right here on this part, on this middle shelf. Just make sure you know what number you have, because that's the one that you're kind of in charge of. Maybe jot your number down on somewhere.
I don't bring my bag. I saw you.
I was thinking if I had this other one. That's why I was waiting. Okay, whatever. Long as the mercy.
What if she's like tea? So still.
Why would I be cheating in the living room? Like,
Because I've done it before.
They would teach it weird.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
He was so mean, he's like, you can only be one other person.
Yeah. I was just joking.
Actually, I only get that if I speak something.
What?
Oh my god.
He's like super old.
And the heart wants it.
Alright. Okay.
He actually,
I'm
jealous.
You're jealous.
You're both jealous of each other.
And we saw our name.